Hi, I'm Bill Attardi, and this is Learners Live, something you may not know. First of all, let me wish everyone a happy new year. 2025 is over, and I hope it was a good year for you and that you enjoyed the holidays. I certainly did with me and my family and friends, and looking forward to 2026. Just to give you a little history, uh, 25 years ago, I started a website called Energy Watch. And in January of 2025, I transitioned that website into Learners Live. And the reason for that was over the 25 years, energy was an important factor of a focus of the lighting industry and in general, the electrical industry. It's still a factor, but with LED and lighting, it's not as important as it once was. And I decided to move and transition the information I was providing into more of what's going on in the business world, like artificial light, artificial intelligence, and a host of technologies that are affecting businesses today. And that's what I started in January of 2025. And as you can see by this particular slide, as promised, we recorded 12 different learning sessions on e-learning showcase, which is on Learners Live. And I also recorded those and they're available on our YouTube account, YouTube at Bill Attardi. So all of these are available. You can see and view them at any time. And I think they're topical and I hope they make you smarter. I hope they help you in the business world in your own personal business. So, but that was 2025. Now it's 2026, January of 2026. And the plan this year is to use the case study method of teaching. Been doing this now for 25 years at Monmouth University at the graduate and undergraduate level. And I have a host of case studies and analysis of those case studies that I think is as good as anywhere you'll ever find. And that's what we plan to do on both YouTube and Learners Live, is to post a different case study every month throughout 2026. I hope it makes you smarter. The process with case studies is that you learn from decision making, from the decisions made by the most successful businesses, and also maybe why they failed. You can always learn from not only the success, but the failure of businesses as well. And as with all my learning sessions, the important part is to apply it to your business today and maybe learn something. The first case study is on Montgomery Ward. I call that company an innovation-centric business that was started in 1872. And you may say right off the bat that, what is Attardi doing? 1872, I can't learn anything from a company that started 125 years ago. Well, keep that thought. And after I go through this, I think you're going to change your opinion, because this is a case study that has a learning lesson forever. The first thing I like to start with is that Montgomery Ward, back in the 19th century, offered free delivery. Everyone thinks it was started by Jeff Bezos at Amazon. Well, Aaron Montgomery Ward was the one who started that back in 1872. That's who he is, Aaron Montgomery Ward. He was born in 1843 or 44. Not sure what year, in New Jersey. I guess they didn't keep good records then. Anyway, Chatham, New Jersey. He's a Jersey boy. And he died in 1913 and in Highland Park outside of Chicago. That's who we're talking about. Aaron Montgomery Ward, who started the business. He was a traveling salesman. And I don't know exactly if that's his particular wagon and horse, but he was 28 years old in 1872, and he traveled by horse and wagon throughout the Midwest, and he sold out of the wagon. And I got to believe that he probably slept in the wagon too. But that's his business. That's what he was doing. And I think one day he woke up in a nightmare saying, there's just got to be a better way to sell this stuff, okay? I'm 28 years old and I'm going to get old very quickly if I keep traveling all over the Midwest by horse and buggy. Anyway, the thought came to him that how can I get my customers to come to me? I can't travel enough to get to all the customers I want to get to. So how can I get customers to come to me? The first thing you got to think about is innovation. What kind of vision did Aaron Montgomery Ward have at the time? I think he understood that there was a real opportunity in the marketplace, and it was a time to act. In the 1870s and 80s, it was the post-Civil War period. Dynamic growth in the American market, okay, all over the country. The railroad was expanding. Mail was going from the Pony Express, and railroads were now delivering mail. There was industry growth, a lot of manufacturing going on, supplier support, and racism was still there. And I'll get you to understand why racism was also a big opportunity for the Montgomery Ward business. The point is, he said, I'm not going to do this anymore, traveling all over. I'm going to have customers come to me. And the way to do that is with a catalog of goods and services that I have in my wagon that I'm going to publish and send to all my customers. I break this particular presentation into 4 pieces, okay? The first thing, I think we need to understand the innovation that he came about. Second is, what is the overall strategy of Montgomery Ward and Aaron Montgomery Ward? And we got to deal with the marketing mix, because if we're going to have marketing lessons, it's all in that marketing mix. And it's true today as it was back then. And as most people know, Montgomery Ward doesn't exist today. They went out of business in 2000. And I'd like to ask everyone, what decisions would you have made to keep them in business? There was a real opportunity to keep them in business, and I want you to think about that a little bit, and we'll address it at the end. The first thing is, what kind of innovation was it? And back then, and when you think of innovation, disruptive innovations, that's a discontinuous market shift from the few to the many. And there's no doubt that this was, back in the 19th century, a disruptive innovation. It was only a single sheet of paper, single sheet catalog with 163 items, and he sent it to all his customers. And over the years, he built it up. He added and added and added more and more items, and the orders kept pouring in. All of a sudden, he was serving not out of his wagon, but out of a warehouse in the Chicago area. And this is what the catalog looked like over the years. And you can see some of the prices. You can buy a shirt for 74 cents or a pair of shoes for $1.77. And when you think about the layout of this particular catalog, it hasn't changed that much, really, when you think about it. You can go to Amazon and they show the same kinds of stuff, right? This is the order form, and you can have an easy payment order form. Basically, what Aaron said was, you send me money and I'll send you goods. And I want to point to this particular a sentence on the bottom of the list. Here it is. It says, if customer is married and order totals more than $100, both the husband and wife must sign. Otherwise, one signature is required. So anything over $100, he wanted at least 2 signatures on it. Okay. And here's something that I started with that I think is something most people think was invented just recently, and probably with some of you, the main reason why you do business with Amazon, because they don't charge for delivery. They cover it with their membership fee. But back in the 19th century and the early 20th century, Aaron Montgomery Ward was offering free delivery. You pay just the printed price. That's all you pay. Every marketing lesson always should start with the customer, customer-centric. Who were the target customers of Aaron Montgomery Ward, okay? And I think we can see that in the case study, it points out that rural Americans, general stores in the small towns, ranchers, farmers, anybody that really had some purchasing power, that's who Aaron called on. And more importantly, he called on customers that had no access to retail stores. And when you think about ranchers and farmers out in the country, they didn't get to the city very often, okay? Those were his customers. Now that he is printing a catalog, he's got to think about who his target customers are now. He's not selling out of his wagon anymore. He's selling out of a 1.5 million square foot warehouse in the Chicago area. And you can see what that looks like, okay? Anyway, his customers are still rural Americans, ranchers, farmers, customers with purchasing power. Customers not only can't get to the store, but customers are not allowed to shop in retail stores. I mentioned to you about racism. Well, African Americans in the South were not allowed, even in the big cities, to go into the retail stores. This was a real opportunity for Montgomery Ward because he sent his catalog to every African American that was living in the South. Interesting, right? When you think about it, now everyone gets a catalog. One of the focuses of Montgomery Ward was to make sure that they mailed out everybody they could and that they can get a catalog. What was his strategy? Think about the catalog, but think about what his overall plan of action was. That's the strategy. And what are the individual activities that he had to do in order to accomplish that strategy? Well, first of all, he's got to be customer-centric. And in the case, you can see throughout the case, it's all about how Aaron Montgomery Ward understood and had a very close understanding of his customers. It's a direct relationship between the company and his customers. The strategy was very simple. Serve my customers by having them come to me. And he made sure that everyone in the organization understood that they weren't really in the catalog business. They were serving customers to have them buy out of the catalog. He did a lot of research. The case study shows that he not only did primary research by asking his customers whether or not this particular catalog would have any interest, would they buy out of a catalog, and he did a lot of secondary research to determine the opportunity in the marketplace. And there was a lot of opportunity at the time, post-Civil War and early 20th century industrial USA. And he needed to change the way people buy. That's a major, major change when you think about it. People bought in retail stores and general stores, and now he's asking them to buy through a catalog. That's a new business model. And of course, free delivery had something to do with the opportunity to get people to buy out of the catalog. Sears and Roebuck came about. Because of the success of Montgomery Ward, you always get competition. And this is how this started. In 1886, again, we're going back a lot of years, 1886, Sears produced their first catalog. Montgomery Ward had a 14-year head start on Sears. But Sears came about through two individuals. One was Richard Sears, and just like Aaron Montgomery Ward, he was a traveling salesman, and he was selling watches in the railroad stations. But sometimes he would get on the railroad station and sell watches. And every once in a while, his watches needed to be repaired, and he didn't know how to repair watches. So he partnered up with Alva Roebuck, and it became Sears and Roebucks. And And in 1893, they created a 322-page diversified catalog, even more extensive than Montgomery Ward. So now you had these two companies, Montgomery Ward and Sears. Folks, let me tell you, in the early years, those two companies for 100 years dominated the retail market, not only through their catalog, but also through the stores that they developed over the years. And when you think about their communication to the customer base, it was very limited. They had direct mail, and it started out with Pony Express, and then the railroad got involved with the mail, and then magazines and newspapers. And really the biggest communication vehicle was the catalog, and that was Montgomery Ward and Sears catalog. And then over the years, of course, but it wasn't until the 20s that radio started, and of course, the television and shopping on TV and emails and internet and social media, direct marketing, digital marketing, direct response. We have many, many ways of communicating to our customers today that they just didn't have back then. Number 3, the marketing mix. I think it's important to point out in any marketing lesson what the marketing mix is. And you remember the 4 P's, right? Product, place, price, and promotion. Well, we transitioned into the 4 C's. Consumer solution, that's the product. And in this case, it was the 500-page catalog. That's what he was selling. Convenience to buy, there's no store. It's a store without walls. One of the things that both Sears and Montgomery Ward focused on as far as pricing was concerned was not discounting, but affordable, reasonable pricing. That's what they promoted in their catalogs. And their biggest communication, both companies, but it started with Aaron Montgomery Ward, when he said satisfaction guaranteed or your money back. That was the communications motto for Montgomery Ward. And of course, both companies provided free delivery. This was an innovative, innovation-centric company. They had the vision and the vision was very simple. Send me money and I'll send you goods. It was a new business model. Customers came to them. The focus was customers who could not shop in the retail stores. They had to buy because they either had no access to it or they weren't allowed to shop in the stores. They did the market research and it was ongoing. It was ongoing direct customer feedback. When you have a catalog business, you're communicating and selling on an ongoing basis to your customer base. Economic growth throughout the country was developing and created a very, very strong opportunity for both companies. The railroad, mail, manufacturing, and as I mentioned, racism had an effect in all of this business. And Montgomery Ward had a 14-year advance, head start on Sears. So after all those years, success happened with Montgomery Ward. And they developed in the early 1930s and 40s over 500 stores in addition to the catalog. And they were doing over $3 billion a year. But as I mentioned, there was the rise and fall of Montgomery Ward. The rise happened to be the mail order catalog. It grew to 500 pages. In 1987, they did $1 million. And back then, that was big. In 1908, they had a 1.25 million square foot warehouse in Chicago serving their catalog business. Aaron died in 1913, but he never built a store. 1930 was when they built the stores of Montgomery Ward throughout the Midwest and in the East Coast. 556 stores. They were the largest retailer in the United States. That was the rise of Montgomery Ward. The fall happened, I think, started in 1985 when they closed their catalog business. After 113 years, they closed, and their competition was increasing. Not only Sears, Sam Walton was starting Walmart and Target, very strong competitors with discount pricing that people were gravitating toward. And in December of 2000, Montgomery Ward filed for bankruptcy. After 125 years, this particular dynamo in the retail lighting, in the retail business, went out of business. So when you think about your business, and you're having a problem, and this was a major problem, obviously, for Montgomery Ward. I hope you don't have this kind of a problem, but problems need to be solved, okay? The first thing is to analyze what went wrong. What do you feel is the reason why this company had to file for bankruptcy? Here are some of the reasons that we analyze in this particular case. It was outdated business model. The threat from competition got to be so severe that they couldn't keep up. The stores were in very weak locations. They discontinued the catalog, which was their core business, in 1985. There was no unique identity. It had a damaged image. People were not shopping in Montgomery Ward anymore. They failed to innovate. The lifeblood of the business that started with Aaron was all about innovation. They forgot to do that. And there was no reason then. And in fact, they were calling Montgomery Ward Monkey Wards. And that image was destroying the company. So this is the question I have, and I want to ask each and every one of you. I'll give you 10 seconds to think about it. If we agree that that was the problem, what decision would you have made if you were the CEO of Montgomery Ward back in 2000 when they filed for bankruptcy, okay? I'm going to give you 10 seconds to think about it. Okay, that's enough. This is what I do to my class. I ask them to think about it. And then here's what we come up with. After the analysis, after we clearly understand what the problems were, this is what the recommendation would have been. Close all the stores, every single one of them, okay? Get back to the roots of the company. The company was started with a catalog. Well, in today's world, it could have been an electronic catalog, okay? And it could have had the same exact promotional communication to your customer. Satisfaction guaranteed or your money back, free delivery, maybe start a membership. Timing is everything. The internet, social media, streaming, e-commerce, all of this was an opportunity happening back in 2000. The opportunity in 1872 was that dynamic growth in the U.S. economy. Well, the opportunity in 2000 was online, internet selling. And a couple of companies took advantage of that. Amazon, Alibaba, eBay. Think about it. Amazon was started in 1994. Okay. He was selling books out of a garage in Seattle. He didn't have any resources. But Montgomery Ward was a $3 billion corporation. They had lots of resources. Why weren't they thinking about selling their catalog online as an electronic catalog? It could have saved the company. Who knows? They could be the dominant retailer today and not Amazon. In fact, there is awards, by the way. I just show you very quickly. This is Wards. This is the result of Montgomery Wards. It's called Wards. They bought the name, and it's about a $6 or $7 million company. That's all it is. And bottom line, it's not in the retail business any longer. So before I close, are there any questions? This is a very, very fun type of case study that I work with my students. It's a disruptive innovation, and it's always good to to talk about a company that's 125 years ago, and they started with a discontinuous market shift from the few to the many. It was a full catalog of goods, mass marketing, changing buying habits. Same goods are sold in the big cities, in the retail stores in the big cities. It targeted new customers. Economic growth throughout the United States was the opportunity, okay? And they created jobs throughout the Chicago area and throughout the country in all the stores that Montgomery Ward dominated. As always, with every case study, I'm going to go to artificial intelligence. In this case, it's ChatGPT for marketing lessons, and I'm going to articulate each one. This is what Chat says are the marketing lessons from the Montgomery Ward case study. It's an innovative marketing that can disrupt entire industries. It disrupted the retail industry to the point where it changed everything with respect to how people bought goods. It built trust and loyalty. That's what Aaron Montgomery Ward focused on, and it was essential to growing his business. He adapted to the changing consumer buying behavior. People never bought from a catalog before, and he adapted that particular change so they were comfortable with doing that. Diversification and strategic investments managed continue to diversify and building warehouses and stores throughout the country. The brand conception, there's no question that Montgomery Ward and Sears developed a very strong brand loyalty with their customer base. Leverage technology for efficiency and customer experience. If customers had a good experience buying with a catalog, they would come back over and over and over again. Leadership and vision drive long-term success. And the final comment I'd like to make is the reason why Montgomery Ward and Sears dominated the retail business for over 100 years is because of customer-centric innovation, and that is what drives growth. Keep that in mind, and hopefully it will drive the growth in your business. Talk to you next month.